So I pretty much see a new Batman movie if one came out every single year. We got the new The Batman coming out. The trailer was great, you know. The naysayers, the Pattinson naysayers, were kind of pushed aside a little bit. And I know a great trailer does not make a great movie, but I think expectations are high, as they usually are with the film of this caliber. So, the last time we got a Batman film was Justice League, which wasn't a true Batman film, but he was in it. He was one of the main characters. You can even debate that he was the main character, but Affleck never got one true film. So that means over the past 30 years or so, we've gotten about 9 different Batman films, and I'm with it. I've seen every single one in theaters except for Batman and Robin. And you know why. Even at the tender age of 15, I knew from immediately watching that trailer that it was going to be utter trash, as so did anyone else, and that's why it bombed, and that's why it almost killed the franchise. They called it a franchise killer for a while until Nolan came back and saved the proverbial day. But the reason I say that I can see a Batman movie every year is this. Not only because I love the character, but because there's so many stories that can be made from Batman. Now, it's story time. I'm going to take you back a little bit and talk about a Marvel character. And that Marvel character is Spider-Man. I remember when Spider-Man was coming out, The Amazing Spider-Man was coming out about a decade ago. I can't quite remember what year it was. There was a big poster in Times Square, and a friend I was walking with went, I don't want to see that. I've been seeing too many Spider-Man movies. We already had 3. Why do they need to make another Spider-Man? We all know what happens. We all know the origin. And, he had a point. I was like, you know what? This one looks different. It's like kind of like a gritty. And I saw The Amazing Spider-Man, and he did not. And I enjoyed it. I liked what Webb did in his directing style. I liked the dynamic between Garfield and Emma Stone. Yeah, and obviously it wasn't a true kind of like Peter Parker-esque, but they were going for something different, and it was enjoyable despite its flaws. It did have a lot of flaws. I wouldn't put it up there with Spider-Man 1 or 2, but I pretty much ranked it higher than the third Spider-Man. So I was like, hey, this new incarnation is fine. And then The Amazing Spider-Man 2 came out, and it was trash. Now, it had some cool stuff in it, some cool special effects. Again, Stone and Garfield had good chemistry. They did some things well, but overall it was a convoluted mess. And then that killed that franchise, and people were literally like, all right, that's it now, especially my friend. He was like, no more Spider-Man. We don't want to see another origin story. We don't want to see any of that nonsense. I'm done with Spider-Man. And then Marvel gets the rights back. And Spider-Man is introduced in the MCU, played by Tom Holland. We get that Civil War trailer drops, and everyone's on board with Spider-Man again. And since then, he's appeared in 5 Marvel movies, I believe, 2 of which he is the main focus, and that doesn't seem to stop. It seems that people are not tiring of Tom Holland as Spider-Man. In fact, the second movie was almost more well received than the first. He was one of the favorites in Infinity War. It had very memorable scenes in Endgame. So Spider-Man went over the span of about less than like a few years, going from nobody wants to see that nonsense anymore to everyone being back on board. And that is my point. With comic book characters especially, it's not that people get tired of them. They get tired of the same thing. And I think Batman, going back to him, is a great example. Even though we're getting a new vision on Batman, they kind of keep going back to the same things. We're getting the Riddler again, we're getting the Penguin again, and you want to see these classic villains. Everyone wants to see the Joker. I get it. I totally get it. But there's tons of characters that you could just keep going with, and you could have Clayface, you could have the Mad Hatter, and I know that these characters are not as embedded in the zeitgeist, in the consciousness of the average person that isn't a comic book fan, but my point is you can kind of really James Bond Batman and just accept that there's going to be a new actor that portrays the role every 4 or 5 years, and Bond takes a little bit longer, and it's just going to keep continuing with new villains, and they can make up new villains. It doesn't always have to be a comic book villain. And that's my point. It's not that these films, people get tired of them. They get tired of them doing the same thing or being bad. Case in point would be Deadpool. We've gotten 2 Deadpool films. The first one is very beloved, was a huge hit, one of the biggest R-rated hits, if not the biggest at the time. And then part 2 came out, which had some of its naysayers, but generally was also well received. There's a high anticipation for Deadpool 3. Now, if Deadpool 3 does the same thing or is not as good, then people will get tired of Deadpool. If Ryan Reynolds doesn't have the same life and energy he had playing the role early on, then people will get tired of it. But if it's just as good, if not better than 1 and 2, people are going to want to see it keep going. Now, I know that I'm not going to want to see it keep going forever, but just think of Hugh Jackman. People love Hugh Jackman in the role of the Wolverine. And some of his movies, look how bad that first one was, that X-Men Origins movie, but he was still so well likable that people were like, you know what, we're willing to get better from here. And they did get better. And that's what kept them going. Obviously, he was also in the X-Men franchise, but because the Wolverine, the one when he's like the samurai and everything, was better than the Origins film, and then Logan popped off, people were sad to see him go. They're like, nobody else can play Wolverine now. And that's the point. It's not that these films get tiring or people don't want to see them. It's that they get bad and people don't want to see them. People like The Lost World, Jurassic Park, whatever the other one was, Jurassic World. It was okay. I enjoyed it. But then quickly, they deteriorated. And now nobody really wants to see them. They keep making them because they make money. But the fan base is kind of like, I guess we got to go see this one. But my point is, if the Jurassic Park films, either in the original trilogy or this one, had gotten better, people would still be on board. And I guess that's my point, is that the Batman could keep going with new directors and new actors playing the role and just a different life and a different energy. For as far as the eye can see, they're kind of like the new James Bond. And I'm excited for that. So if you like my rant, guys, subscribe. If not, hit the dislike button. If you liked it, give me the thumbs up. Thanks.